Hello, Sarah.
Hi,
Welcome.
Catherine.
It's so
Thank you.
nice to have you today to talk about your amazing book and the work you're doing in the world.
Mhm.
And I'd like to just introduce Sarah Thompson here with her bio. I'm Catherine Gregory, co-founder of Modern Wisdom Press. We publish transformational nonfiction books that help raise consciousness on the planet. Sarah is one of our amazing authors, and she has written a book called Functional Maternity. Functional Maternity is a wonderful resource and guide for prenatal practitioners, or really anyone seeking a higher level of understanding of functional medicine and how it relates to maternity care. So nice to have you here, Sarah, and I'd love to hear a little more about your practice and especially how you really have honed in on the science behind prenatal nutrition.
Yeah.
Welcome.
So my practice is based here in Colorado, and we do functional medicine based practice for patients here locally and virtually all over the world. And we follow women through pregnancy who are looking for a adjunct to their conventional obstetrical care and are looking for a little bit more of an in-depth nutrition focus in the prevention, treatment, management of pregnancy complications. My practice really kind of fell into this through my own pregnancy experiences. And what I found through those experiences was a lack of education knowledge and nutrition education and nutrition knowledge with the actual primary care providers themselves, whether they were OB physicians or midwives. There seemed to be a lack of knowledge in nutrition and how it played into pregnancy health, other than the basics of just take your prenatal and you're okay. And so I, being the person I am, I'm very analytical, very pragmatic. I'm very much I need to know how, I need to know why these things work. I need to know how and why all these things happen. I started diving into it myself. I started looking for books. I started looking for continuing education and all those things to help me understand my own pregnancy. And very quickly, I realized that even within that world, there was very little information to even be found. Now, we've been very lucky that we've had a boom in nutrition research since about 2006. I always joke that was like the big bang of nutrition research was 2006. That's when everybody started going, wait a second, this really does matter. We really do need to look into this. And this really can help prevent and treat diseases across the board, not just in pregnancy. And so since then, I have spent a large amount of time studying with physicians and midwives and people who are well educated, in addition to doing research on my own to look for these different connections. And for years, I had physicians and midwives that I work with very closely tell me I should write a book. And I know you and I talked many years ago about the possibility of writing the book. And I kept thinking, I don't know if I'm the right person to do that. I don't have a medical degree. I'm not a physician. I really should let that baton be passed by somebody with a little bit more with a little bit more medical base. And eventually I said, well, nobody's doing it, so I should probably do it. And here we are.
And I love it. And I'm so glad you did it, because you seeking as a pregnant woman research and information that wasn't all in one place was, the spark, it sounds like, that really made you see the need for a resource that's in one place so that women and their practitioners can access solid science that helps inform, how their pregnancies unfold and the health of their babies ultimately and themselves during pregnancy. So I'm so glad that, the idea was sparked and that you followed through on it. And I'm really curious to hear, how there's so much science in this book. Like, I was blown away, as your coach and your editor, how you brought this book together. And really, it is an evidence-based book that is grounded in solid science, so that practitioners know, how to really carry their clients through challenges, or prevent challenges from happening in the pregnancy. So can you talk about some of those like health concerns, major health concerns that women face during pregnancy that can actually be prevented by nutrition?
Yeah. Yeah. We touch on a couple of them in the book, right? Some of the main ones we see, such as nausea in pregnancy, hypertension, anxiety and depression. Those are some pretty common complaints, conditions, diseases that we see throughout maternity care. And they're almost 100% preventable through understanding the maternal physiology and what is happening in the body at that time, and either regulating that physiology or supporting that physiology through diet, lifestyle, nutrition, and all those things. Hypertension, preeclampsia is a big one, simply because it is the number one reason that most women are induced. The primary reason that we see, a lot of maternal death. And that's why one of the reasons that our rates of these maternal complications is so elevated here in the United States is our high rate of hypertension and preeclampsia. What's interesting about that is a lot of these preeclampsia cases can be prevented with proper nutrition. And a lot of the research into nutrition and preeclampsia isn't really new. It just hasn't been put in one place, and it's kind of been scattered and sporadic. And once you start to piece the puzzle together, you start to see some interesting patterns and some interesting things that you could, very well prevent by understanding what's happening there. A lot of preeclampsia actually begins before pregnancy even happens. So it's
Mhm.
kind of that initial development of the baby, when that placenta initially develops, that we see that that risk factor is already in place.
Right. And that leads me to, when we met and talked about this book idea years ago, I was working in a fertility practice with women struggling with their fertility, and you were really focused in on your acupuncture around fertility. And so I'm curious how that fertility process with clients, matters as far as the
Yeah.
outcomes of their pregnancy.
Yeah, I it absolutely does. And pregnancy isn't just a 9 to 10 month gestational period. Pregnancy begins before you even conceive, right? A year before you conceive, in my opinion, is still part of pregnancy, because
Mhm.
everything you do in that time frame affects the development of the baby and your potential for risk factors throughout the pregnancy. And it doesn't end once the baby gets here.
Mm.
Postpartum can be a year to 2 years after the baby even is born. We still have hormonal shifts. We still have changes in the maternal physiology that are unique to any other time in our lives.
Mhm.
And so when I say I specialize in maternity care, it's not just gestational care. It's care of the entire process of pregnancy, the preconception phase through the postpartum phase, because there's a lot of stuff happening in the maternal body that can either set you up for success or failure before you're even pregnant. And then as you're pregnant, set you up for success or failure for the rest of your life's health. And
Mm.
so it is a little more encompassing than just pregnancy care. It's
Yeah.
the care of the mother herself before, during, and after pregnancy.
And how is that different than like your traditional approach with Western medicine, for example, versus functional medicine?
Mhm.
How does that care, what you just said about the care of the mother, that's sort of overlooked, or is it overlooked? And most people are focused on the nutrition of the baby and the pregnancy
Absolutely.
itself.
Yeah, and when you read a lot of things or you hear from your primary care provider about, prenatal nutrition, prenatal means the care of the baby. So when we're talking about prenatal nutrition, we're talking about vitamins, minerals, carbohydrates, metabolic processes that affect the development of the baby. But there are a lot of things that happen in the mother that this limited nutrition that goes into the growth of the baby doesn't help her actually function correctly. And so when we look at functional medicine in that maternity care, we're focused on making that mother healthy, making sure her body is functioning the way it is supposed to, because if her body is functional and she is properly nourished, that baby is going to be just fine.
Mm.
Those processes are in place to grow that baby if she's doing great. But you can have a healthy baby and have a very, very sick mother,
Mm.
because that baby is going to take everything it needs from her and it's going to leave her wasted. The other
Wow.
thing is that we see there's a lot of different vitamins, minerals, metabolic processes, and things that go into, say, mom's labor and delivery
Mhm.
processes that have nothing to do with prenatal nutrition. And in fact, oftentimes contradicts what we've been told in prenatal nutrition, such as vitamin A. Vitamin A is very controversial in the prenatal diet because of some, there's a whole section in the book on it, because it was some bad science back in the 1960s, 1970s. And unfortunately, we haven't moved past that. And we find now that those studies were based off of a different form of vitamin A than what we see in the diet. And we need vitamin A for certain processes in the body. Now, we need it at the initiation of conception for baby to grow and have some certain genetic things happen. But then we kind of forget about it because it doesn't do anything after that to really help grow babies. But what it does is in the third trimester, you have to have vitamin A to make the receptors for oxytocin, which is how you're going to deliver that baby. And so if you're not getting enough vitamin A in the diet as a pregnant mother, you may not have a great labor experience because you can't have contractions successfully. Mm-hmm. And what we see is, we have a 40-ish% induction rate. Why are so many women needing this help in labor? That shouldn't be there. Our bodies are designed to birth if we give it what it needs. And one of the things I talk about a lot is this idea of a functional childbirth. And if we support a mom and we give her what she needs, her body's going to do what it needs to do with the signals that it gets from the baby. But we have to give it to her, right? Vitamin A. We have to have vitamin A to make those receptors. In the third trimester, there is a 6-fold increase in vitamin A receptors in the uterus, meaning we need 6-fold the amount of vitamin A to make those receptors happen in the uterus. That's a lot of vitamin A. And most prenatal vitamins don't have any. Wow. Because it doesn't help grow babies.
So then are you recommending dietary sources of vitamin A, or is this supplementation too?
Mm-hmm. A little bit of both, right? I have my favorite prenatal supplements that I use. And, one of the things I say in the book is there is no prenatal vitamin that's going to help support the pregnancy the whole way through, because nutritional demand changes throughout each trimester based off of these signals that mom is getting from the baby. We see metabolic changes, like in how mom's ability to process carbohydrates and fats, iron metabolism, all these things change at different phases in pregnancy. And so we need different nutrients at higher amounts at different phases of pregnancy. And so we do a lot of dietary focus in the office. When I'm guiding patients through their pregnancy care, we're talking very strategically about where they are in gestation. This is what is happening in their body. These are the nutrients they need to be focusing on so that their body functions and does what it is supposed to do at that stage of gestation, so that we don't have a complication in the next stage.
That's wonderful. That's wonderful. So I love that you have taken your heart and your soul and your practice and birthed this book into the world. And I'm really curious, how people can work with you. Are you accepting new patients in your clinic, or what does that look like? And how do people reach out to you? I know you said you were developing some courses, you're teaching coming up. I would love to hear, what's next and how people might find you.
Yeah, absolutely. So the clinic is Sacred Vessel Acupuncture and Functional Medicine. And yes, we are always accepting new patients. I think we are about a month out on new patients at this time, but we are always accepting new patients. I can't say no to a mom in need. So I want to help everybody who needs the help. So we are always accepting patients, and they can be local, they can be virtual. All over the country. I have patients as far away as Australia and New Zealand and Canada. So we're all over the place. I am also developing courses. So a lot of this book was really geared towards practitioners, right? And I know you and I went back and forth on, I don't know, Sarah, this is a really technical book. Is this really for women? I'm like, well, I kind of want it to be, because I want everybody to know what is happening in their body. But the reality is this information is pretty deep. It's pretty heavy. And to understand a lot of what the book is saying, having a base in some sort of, biology or base in anatomy and physiology is helpful, even though I try to really break it down for everybody. So the goal is to get as many practitioners out there educated in the changes in maternity care, because functional medicine in general, is very, very different inside and outside of pregnancy. A lot of the things that we do in functional medicine outside of pregnancy can't apply to pregnancy because things that we would be considered toxic signs of disease are 100% normal in pregnancy. Take the liver enzyme alkaline phosphatase. If you run a lab outside of pregnancy and that value is above, up into the 120 range, you got a liver problem. Something's going on here. But in pregnancy, it's the complete opposite. If by the 3rd trimester that ALP has not elevated, now we have a problem. It's supposed to elevate. And it's amazing to me how many practitioners don't know this, and how many practitioners miss this, and how many don't know that this enzyme is produced by the placenta and it needs zinc to be made. And oftentimes a low ALP is a sign of a zinc deficiency. So my goal with the book, a lot of the goal with the book, was to increase the educational base of practitioners who are working with pregnant women so that we can help more women. So we can find these little nuances in nutritional insufficiencies and deficiencies, and we can prevent more complications. And together, help start bringing these maternal statistics down, because right now the US isn't doing so hot. And we have to work as a team, and we have to collaborate with the OBs and the midwives and the functional medicine practitioners and the nutritionists and anybody else who can contribute to this whole person medicine, because the physicians can't do it all, right? We can't expect them to do it all. They are there for medical management. That's their job, and they do a really good job at it. We need to help them. And by educating more practitioners on these different changes in maternity care, we can. And we can help make their job easier. And we can help women have better labor outcomes, and in turn, help the future generation have a better start at life that puts them on a better path for preventing even more chronic diseases. We see that birth method matters, right? Being born by cesarean, and yes, there are cesareans that need to be done. They are life-saving. They have a purpose. But children who are born via cesarean are more likely to have certain medical conditions later in life. We just see that in the stats. And there are things that we can do to help prevent that. But we have to understand that what those changes are and not ignore them, and set that next generation up for success. And it starts with the pregnancy itself. I always joke, when I have a mother in the room, yes, I'm treating the mother in the room in front of me, but at the same time, I'm also setting up that next generation for success or failure. So it's kind of a big, it's a big job to be a maternal specialist in any form, whether you're a chiropractor, an OB, a midwife. It doesn't matter what form of medicine you do. We are all taking into account, or should be, the mother who's in the office and that next generation.
I love that. And I love that it's rippling forward. You're paying it forward to the future generations.
Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you, Sarah. And so with your book, Becoming a Published Author, I know we were talking a little bit about, what's happened since then in your business and what's coming. So can you share a little bit more about that?
Yes. So following off of what I was, rambling on about practitioners needing this book, they also need more education than what I put in this book. So we are working on more advanced courses. So things like learning how to read lab work for pregnancy, because that's a big part of the prevention and diagnostics, is learning how to read the labs, because you read them very differently in pregnancy, kind of like that ALP level, than you would outside of pregnancy. So this summer, keep an eye out. There should be some courses popping up. In the future, I already am signed up to do some continuing education courses through some different midwifery conferences, doula conferences, and some different things like that. So those are some things in the works for the future. There are more free downloads on the website, so www.functionalmaternity.com. That will be popping up. I have a fertility handout, a stress reduction strategies handout, and some things that will be free downloads.
Great. And your book is live on Amazon as well, right?
Yes. Yep, the book is up on Amazon, and you can also order it through your favorite local bookstore. We're all about supporting the local bookstores. So you just go in there and they can look up the ISBN number and they can order it for you, and you get to support the local and get the book.
I love it. So functionalmaternity.com.
Yep, that's the website. And then we also have our social media pages, which are at functional.maternity. And then the clinic is sacredvessel.acu.fm.
Okay, wonderful. Wonderful. Well, thank you so much, Sarah, for sharing your time and your expertise with us all today. Any last thoughts to share with our listeners?
No, but I want to basically just do a shout out to you guys over at Modern Wisdom Press, because without you, the book wouldn't be here. And it was a lot of your coaching and guidance that got it here. And
Oh,
I really have to give you guys a big thank you for that.
well, thank you, Sarah. You actually blew us out of the water with how you brought it all together with this, really solid evidence-based, research-oriented and driven book, and wrote it within 9 weeks. Like, I still am just amazed at that process that you went through. And I'm so glad that you chose to, be the one to write the book that needed to be in the world. So thank you so much for sharing your expertise and knowledge and wisdom with the world.
Thank you.